The story begins with our main character speeding down the road on his red motorcycle. Out of nowhere, his phone rings. He pulls it from his pocket and answers. Introducing himself as Wong Han, a woman's voice on the other end claims she's expecting his child. He doesn't believe her for a second and hangs up, brushing it off without much thought. Shaking it off, he focuses on the road again, weaving through traffic with practiced skill. Before long, he pulls up to a shop to pick up his delivery orders. As he waits, he overhears his chubby coworker muttering something. Curious, Wong Han asks what it's about. The guy explains that the daughter of the powerful Su family is marrying the son of the richest man in town. He even shows a picture of her, adding that her fiancé isn't just unattractive, but a complete mess of a person. Wong Han takes the phone, staring at the photo. Something about her face feels familiar. Suddenly, he remembers she's the same drunk girl who once stumbled into him and tried to make a move. That's when the earlier phone call clicks in his mind. It might not have been a prank after all, eh? Flashback takes us to 1 month earlier. The young woman from the photo is wandering down a hotel hallway, dizzy and convinced someone spiked her drink. Confused, she enters the wrong room by mistake. Inside, Wong Han is drinking alone, reflecting on his life and why he returned to being a delivery driver. She collapses onto his bed, asking for help, her beauty leaving him stunned. She leans closer, begging again, and he can hardly believe this is real. He remembers gripping the bed sheets tightly that night, back in the present. His coworker notices him zoning out and teases him for spinning yet another wild story. Everyone laughs, reminding him of the crazy things he's claimed in the past: arms dealer, rich heir, and more. They ask why, if he's so important, he's working as a delivery guy. He just smirks, lights a cigarette, and says they wouldn't understand. His coworker scoffs, accusing him of lying again. Suddenly, a sleek red sports car pulls up outside. Everyone stares in shock as a woman steps out, wearing elegant high heels. To their surprise, it's none other than the Su family's young lady herself. She walks straight up to Wong Han, ignoring the others' stunned reactions. With a serious look, she asks why he hasn't been answering her calls. His coworkers are floored, unable to believe he actually knows her. Playing it cool, Wong Han puts out his cigarette and casually asks what she wants. She doesn't waste time. In front of everyone, she reveals that she's expecting his child. The group gasps in disbelief, repeating her words to make sure they heard right. Wong Han, still skeptical, asks if she's certain she isn't mistaken. She fixes him with a firm stare and tells him to come with her to the hospital. She gestures for him to get into the car, and his coworkers shout at him not to just stand there. Wong Han nods, asks a colleague to cover for him, and climbs in. The car speeds through the city, the tension thick inside, breaking the silence. The young woman asks if he really thinks she would make something like this up. He looks at her seriously and tells her that if the baby is his, he'll take full responsibility for both her and the child. Hearing this, she glances at him, her expression unreadable as the luxury car carries them away. The young woman scoffs and asks how he plans to take responsibility with just a delivery driver's salary. He leans back in his seat and replies that it's no problem. He earns an honest living. She reminds him that she's from the Su family, but he shrugs it off, saying he doesn't care about titles or status. Annoyed, she slams on the brakes, and the car screeches to a stop, sending his forehead into the windshield. He shouts, asking if she did it on purpose, but she only throws the Su family name at him again. Soon after, the red sports car pulls up in front of a large hospital. She gets out, and he follows close behind. She warns him to drop the responsibility talk, saying he'll be in serious trouble if her family finds out. Fired up, he raises his voice, declaring he'll take full responsibility if the child is his. She ignores him and tells him to come inside so they can finish this. The two walk in. Silence down the hallway until she tells him to wait. He notices they've stopped in front of a surgery room and asks why. She doesn't answer, only saying she's going in. He's stunned, grabbing her arm and asking if she's serious. She insists he can't possibly support them, but he tells her money doesn't matter. A nurse appears, calling for Suki to begin the procedure. He grips her shoulder, but her mind is set. She pulls away and steps into the operating room, leaving him behind. Alone in the hallway, he feels powerless. Inside, she lies on the gurney as doctors prepare. Her expression shows she doesn't truly want this. A doctor picks up a syringe, reassuring her it will all be over soon. She closes her eyes, going along with it until at the last second. She raises her hand and asks them to wait. Outside, he sits in resignation, thinking there's nothing he can do if she doesn't want the baby. Suddenly, the door opens, and she walks out. He rushes to her side, asking how she feels. She admits she's a little tired, and asks him to drive her home in her car. He agrees instantly. Boasting that he can handle anything, even a fighter jet, he takes the wheel of the red sports car. And as they drive through a fancy neighborhood, his phone rings. He answers casually, only to hear about an upcoming event, and that an important president will be following his orders. A little later, they arrive at a grand mansion. He tells her they're there, but notices she looks unwell. She says this is her home, and tells him to leave before her family sees him. He insists she looks weak, and offers to walk her to the door. But she refuses, and tells him to stay out of her business. As he waves goodbye, she heads toward the house. Suddenly, her heel catches on uneven ground, and she cries out as she stumbles forward. In a flash, he dashes to her side, catching her in his arms before she hits the ground. He calls her clumsy, which irritates her, so he repeats it. She grabs his jacket, pinches his arm, but he doesn't back off. Instead, he lifts her into a princess carry. Joking that her pinch was too strong, the scene shifts inside the Heiress family's grand mansion. He gently sets her on the couch and kneels down to tend to her injured ankle. The young woman insists she doesn't need help and tells him to leave, but he refuses and tells her to stop moving. Just then, the sharp sound of heels echoes across the large room. The door swings open, and both of them are caught off guard in the living room. Two women step inside Suki's mother and her best friend immediately, demanding to know what's going on. Our protagonist quickly stands and explains that Suki twisted her ankle. To avoid further questions, Suki blurts out that he's her boyfriend who came to help her. He's stunned, completely speechless at her words. Her mother is shocked too, yelling if that delivery boy is really her boyfriend. She points at him, demanding answers, but Suki stays silent with a serious face. Finally, she says it was only a joke, and clarifies that he just helped with her ankle. Her mother scolds her, reminding her that she's marrying into the Kun family and can't afford any mistakes. Our protagonist asks, "What's wrong with being a delivery driver?" Suki's mother snaps, calling him a nobody and telling him to keep dreaming if he thinks he can be with her daughter. Furious, he holds back his anger and to cut the tension. Suki thanks him and asks him to leave as he walks out. Suki's mother orders her friend to take Suki to her room and clean the place where the delivery boy stepped. In the bedroom, the friend questions Suki about her relationship with him. She says she might fool her mother, but not her. She saw the way Suki looked at him. Without hesitation, Suki confesses that she's pregnant with his child. Her friend is shocked, asking if she's serious and why it had to be with a delivery driver. Suki explains it was a drunken mistake, but admits she's keeping the baby. The friend freaks out, saying she's lost her mind. Suki then says she's already talked to him, and he promised to take full responsibility. Her friend reminds her that she's from the Su family, and that the delivery boy has nothing to offer. Suki insists she'll handle it herself, and explains she only came back because her grandfather was attending an event. Her friend thinks for a moment, and suggests a terrible idea that Suki should claim the delivery boy forced himself on her. Suki is horrified, saying she could never do that. The scene shifts to our protagonist. Now walking alone through the upscale neighborhood, he grumbles about how there aren't even taxis in such a fancy place. Suddenly, a black car pulls up beside him, making him wary. An old man in a suit steps out, respectfully greeting him as Wong Master. The man explains he's here to take him to the evening's auction. Our protagonist recalls his grandfather had mentioned it and says he'll need a shower and fresh clothes before attending. The limousine speeds off through the city, and soon they arrive at a grand banquet hall filled with the rich and powerful. Now, dressed sharply in a suit, he's impressed by the crowd. Suddenly, A familiar voice calls his name. He turns and sees it's Suki's best friend. She recognizes him immediately, and with a sharp tongue, asks if he's working there as a waiter. Before he can answer, she grabs his sleeve, drags him to a quiet corner, and warns him Suki is her best friend. And if he doesn't take responsibility for the baby, there will be consequences. Our boy is stunned. He thought Suki had ended the pregnancy. Her friend shouts that she decided to keep the baby, leaving him completely shaken. He starts to wonder if she really didn't go through with the procedure at the hospital yesterday. Angrily, the young woman threatens him again, warning that he'll regret it if he tries to run. To prove she's serious, she stomps hard on his foot with her high heel. He yells out in pain as she walks away. At that moment, a man on stage announces that the auction is about to begin. Our protagonist thinks he needs to settle things here quickly so he can go find her and understand what's happening. Just then, a woman in a suit and glasses approaches, greeting him respectfully as Wong Master. She introduces herself as Lu Yu, his assistant, sent by President Lin. He nods and says the auction is starting, telling her to follow him into the main hall. Suddenly, a loud commotion breaks out. Someone barges into the hall, and up front, an announcer declares that the night's main project has already been claimed by the Kuhn family. A man with a smirk twirls his mustache and demands everyone show respect. He introduces himself as Kunle of the Kuhn family and threatens anyone who dares to oppose them. Our protagonist asks who he is, and Lu Yu explains he's the biggest rival tonight. Scoffing, our boy asks if that man really thinks he can compete, but Lu Yu carefully explains the Kuhn family's plan. At that moment, he recalls his co-worker mocking Suki's fiancé and realizes he's part of that family. With a serious expression, he finally pieces everything together. On stage, the auctioneer announces the bidding for Lot 53, the project everyone is after. Without hesitation, Kunle raises his paddle and offers 5 billion. Gasps ripple through the hall, guests whispering that no one would dare challenge the Kuhnes. But calmly, our boy raises his paddle and counters with 6 billion. The crowd erupts in panic, whispering that whoever just challenged the Kuhn family must have a death wish. Enraged, Kunle slams his hand down and shouts, demanding to know who dares oppose him. He stands, flanked by his goons, and bellows that in this city, his family controls everything. He grabs our protagonist by the collar, snarling that no one takes what belongs to them. He then raises his bid to 900 million and threatens him to back down. But our young man only laughs mockingly, ignoring the threat. With a confident smirk, he raises his paddle again and bids 1 billion. Kunle loses control. He lunges, trying to punch him, but our boy is faster, landing a clean hit straight to Kunle's face. The blow sends him flying back across the hall. Standing tall, our protagonist smirks and asks if that's all he's got. The goons charge forward, but he doesn't hesitate. He grabs a chair and hurls it at them, then swiftly takes down another with precise, sharp moves. One of the thugs realizes it was a mistake to mess with him. Meanwhile, Kunle, sprawled on the ground, screams in rage, vowing to have him destroyed. Our boy looks down at him coldly and says it's actually him who's about to be beaten. He leaps forward and with one powerful strike, slams Kunle back down with a resounding bang. Just like that, the rival lies unconscious on the floor. Silence fills the hall. Our young man looks around at the stunned audience and asks if anyone else intends to bid. Terrified, the auctioneer stammers that there are no further bids. Calmly, he tells Lu Yu to handle the paperwork. He has more urgent matters to deal with. Meanwhile, in a lavish room, Suki sits across from her grandfather, who waits on a sofa. She asks why he called her so suddenly that she had to miss the auction. With a grave expression, her grandfather warns her not to say anything reckless when the guest arrives, reminding her that this person doesn't know her. Confused, she wonders what kind of figure could make her usually fearless grandfather act so cautious. A man in a suit stepped forward and announced that the auction was over, but, shockingly, the Kuhn family hadn't won the project. Stunned, the young woman couldn't believe they had lost and wondered who dared to challenge them. Her grandfather then calmly said the person they had been waiting for had finally arrived. The young woman scoffed, thinking he was just being arrogant. She excused herself, saying she needed to make a call to her friend Nanan. As she walked down the hall, she thought to herself that the Kuhn family wouldn't be able to cooperate with the Su family for a while. Distracted by her phone, she suddenly bumped into our protagonist's chest. Irritated, she yelled at him, calling him a stinky delivery boy, and asked why he kept showing up. Without waiting for a reply, she brushed past him and kept dialing her friend to share her important news. At that moment, her grandfather stood to greet the young man who had just entered. The protagonist said he'd already finished handling business and asked who the woman from earlier was. The old man explained she was his granddaughter who admired him greatly and had wanted to meet him. Then he admitted that, because of the young man's interference, the planned marriage alliance between the Kunas and the Sus would have to be postponed. Curious, our guy asked about Suki whether she'd ever had a boyfriend. The old man explained that her family was very strict and she'd never been in a relationship. Smiling knowingly, the young man finally understood. But then his phone rang. It was Sue asking to meet. He agreed and politely took his leave, despite the old man trying once more to bring up his granddaughter. Later, Suki sat alone on a park bench, her expression heavy with sadness. Our protagonist arrived on his motorcycle, spotting her immediately. He parked, walked over, and sat down beside her, telling her not to worry, that he would support her no matter what. Looking at him, she asked softly if he really had the means to do so. With a confident grin, he pulled her close and asked why he wouldn't. She pointed to the expensive watch on his wrist and asked if he even knew its price. Calmly, he named the brand, the model, and its exact cost. She frowned, asking how many years of delivery work it would take him to afford something like that. But he reassured her again, saying money wasn't an issue. She could have the baby in peace. Just then, her phone rang again. It was her mother, ordering her to come home because her fiancé was waiting to discuss the wedding. Suki reluctantly asked the young man to take her back. Smiling, he pointed to his motorcycle. Soon, the two were racing through the streets, the city lights flashing by. She leaned against his back, eyes closed, quietly savoring the moment. When they arrived at her family's mansion, he walked her to the door. Her mother stormed out, furious, demanding to know where she'd been while her fiancé waited inside. Suki answered calmly that she'd just gone for a walk. Her mother noticed the man standing beside her and questioned why she brought him, reminding her of the upcoming marriage. Inside, the fiancé, seated smugly on the sofa, greeted her. He was from the Kuhn family. Suki quickly interrupted, insisting that discussions be postponed since the cooperation deal wasn't finalized. But the fiancé dismissed her concern, saying they could marry first. Tea was a small matter. Inwardly, he smirked, thinking all he needed was to get her into bed before helping her family daughter. Mother then revealed the Kunas had promised them 1 billion in support. But Suki, her eyes sharp with determination, declared she would not marry him. Both her mother and fiancé in shock. Then, taking our protagonist's arm, she announced she was already pregnant with his child. Her mother was stunned, speechless. When she finally found her voice, she screamed at Suki, calling the young man nothing but a delivery boy. Suki begged for more time, but her mother, furious, raised her hand to slap her. Before the blow could land, the protagonist caught her wrist. With cold eyes, he asked if being a delivery driver was truly shameful, or if selling one's own daughter for money was the real disgrace. The fiancé erupted in anger, pointing at Suki and insulting her for being with trash. Enraged, he swore he'd destroy the delivery boy. Without hesitation, the young man slapped him so hard he fell to the ground. Standing tall, our protagonist declared that Suki was carrying his child, and no one had the right to insult her. Seething, the fiancé grabbed a heavy ashtray and charged. Calmly, the young man told Suki to stay behind him. As the attack came, he dodged easily and countered with a powerful punch, sending the fiancé sprawling. He then climbed on top of the man, unleashing a storm of punches until his rivals screamed for help, before the beating could continue. An authoritative voice shouted for it to stop. An elderly man entered with his entourage, the grandfather. Suki was stunned to see him there. He announced he had heard everything. Turning to his granddaughter, he demanded to know if it was true she was pregnant by this delivery boy. With steady eyes, she admitted it was true. The family erupted in panic. The grandfather shouted that the baby must be gotten rid of, or they would offend the Kunes. The fiancé sneered that even if she did, he would never accept her into his family again. Her father groaned in despair, saying the Sue family was finished because of her. Suki, overwhelmed, screamed for everyone to stop. Her body weakened, and she fainted. The protagonist caught her in his arms, whispering that she had nothing to fear, he would take her far away. As her father shouted for him to let her go, the young man glared back in contempt, asking if they even considered themselves human anymore, carrying the young woman in his arms. He turned and headed toward the exit of the mansion. Her father tried to stop him, but he shoved furniture aside with a kick, blocking their path. He announced loudly that he was taking Suki, daring anyone to object. Her parents stood in shock, completely speechless at his boldness. The grandfather and the rest of the family froze, too stunned to act. Since no one answered, he simply strode out with her in his arms. Not long after, they arrived at his luxury apartment building. Inside, he gently laid her down on the sofa to rest. As he adjusted her purse, an ID card slipped out. Picking it up, he noticed it was her birthday. He thought bitterly about how no one in her family remembered. Determined, he promised himself he would prove to her what he could do as her man. 20 minutes passed before Suki stirred awake. She sat up, dazed, not recognizing where she was. Just then, he appeared wearing an apron, carrying a bowl of food. He revealed he had prepared a special feast for her. The aroma filled the air, making her eyes widen. With a teasing grin, he bragged about his cooking skills. She rolled her eyes and told him to stop bragging for once. Sitting down at the table, she watched as he unveiled the real surprise, a birthday cake. With a warm smile, he wished her a happy birthday. Shocked and touched, she asked how he even knew. He reminded her about the ID card, asking if the surprise wasn't amazing. Her eyes welled with tears, moved by his thoughtfulness. He offered his shoulder for her to cry on, joking that not even supermodels got the honor. She laughed through her tears, amused by his silly comfort. At his urging, she tried the food, and to her surprise it was delicious. The table was full of dishes, each showing his effort. Then he told her to make a wish before cutting the cake. Afterward, he asked about her future plans. She shot back, asking if he intended to break his promise of supporting her and the baby. With a serious look, he asked if she'd marry a delivery driver. To his surprise, she accepted without hesitation and boldly set the wedding for the next day. Looking at her determined expression, he smiled, saying the deal was sealed. Their moment was interrupted when his phone buzzed during dinner. Excusing himself, he stepped onto the balcony to answer. His subordinate reported that an assassin named Hydra had entered town, sent to kill him. Calmly, he replied he would deal with it tomorrow. Meanwhile, Suki sat back on the sofa and got a call from her friend, wishing her a happy birthday. She replied softly that her friend was the second person to remember. Assuming it was her fiancé who had remembered first, the friend was shocked when Suki revealed it was the delivery boy. Smiling, she ate another slice of cake and told her friend she was marrying him tomorrow and was already at his place. Alarmed, her friend begged her to calm down, promising to plead with her grandfather to help her escape this mess. Back on the balcony, his subordinate mentioned that a princess had asked about him. Lighting a cigarette, he angrily demanded if his location had been exposed. The subordinate admitted he was forced to talk, since the princess had a terrifying temper. The lighter slipped from his hand as rage surged through him. Accusing his man of betrayal, he yelled into the phone. The subordinate faked bad reception and hung up, leaving him furious and helpless. Clutching the railing, he admitted to himself that things had gotten complicated. Another vibration from his phone pulled him back. Curious, he checked and found a message from Lin King's granddaughter, boldly offering a partnership with the Sue family in exchange for anything he wanted. Before he could fully digest it, her grandfather called to apologize for the trouble and told him to ask for any gift as compensation. Without hesitation, he demanded a rifle, 2 bullets, and authority over a project to be handed to Suki. Later, while Suki was lying in bed, reading, she received a message from her friend saying the partnership had been accepted. Relieved, She smiled to herself. He noticed her smiling and teased her for reading, saying he didn't expect her to enjoy books. Moving closer, he hinted there were plenty of things about him she didn't expect. She tensed nervously, but he only grabbed a pillow, telling her to lie down and rest while he'd take the couch. Before leaving, he added that reading in bed wasn't good for pregnant women. She froze, embarrassed by what she had imagined he'd do. The next morning, sunlight filled the city. On the balcony, he began his workout. Curious, she walked over and asked if it was frog style. He laughed and explained it was dragon coiling hand. Martial art? She teased that she'd never heard of a delivery driver practicing martial arts. He answered that his father taught him to use strength to protect family, and she quietly agreed. Then she surprised him by announcing breakfast was ready. He admitted he hadn't expected her to be so thoughtful. She replied there was much more about her he hadn't noticed yet. After breakfast, he invited her to his office to get the documents for the wedding. She frowned, thinking he was scared, and confirmed firmly that they were getting married today. The sky was clear, signaling a day full of events. As they left the apartment, she admitted she feared his family wouldn't accept her. Though with a baby on the way, they'd have no choice. He smirked, asking if she was marrying his family. She complimented his looks and style, but added his family background was weak, leaving him thoughtful. With a grin, he revved his motorcycle and asked if he wasn't good enough for her. She scoffed and climbed on the back. He told her to hold on tight as they sped off through the city. From afar, two men watched. Her ex-fiancé seethed when he realized she had spent the night with a delivery boy. Enraged, he ordered his men to take the guy out and bring her back. His underling accepted and prepared the ambush, racing through traffic. The young man noticed a white car tailing them in the mirror. With a smirk, he remarked how bold it was to follow him in broad daylight. He told Suki to head home and pack her things while he dealt with it. After she agreed, he accelerated hard, leaving the pursuers behind. Soon, they pulled up in front of her house. She stepped off the motorcycle while he prepared to ride off and confront the threat. Just as he turned, a white van screeched around the corner, closing in fast. He didn't waste a second. Revving the engine, he sped off to draw the pursuers away. Then, with a hair-raising maneuver, he threw the bike into a sharp turn, skidding the rear tire across the asphalt until the motorcycle squealed to a stop. After shaking the tail, he parked in front of a building and looked up at a balcony and confirmed his worst suspicions when he spotted the assassins crouched there. A small, confident smile crossed his face. "Time to stretch my legs," he muttered, and headed into the building. Up the stairs. He found a case on a table and began assembling a sniper rifle. Holding the finished weapon, he praised Lynn under his breath for the choice of gear. Something on the bed, though, made him frown. In the doorway, Suki's friend stumbled out of the bathroom wrapped in a towel and screamed when she saw him. She pointed and demanded to know what a delivery driver was doing in her house until a red laser dot danced on her forehead. He shouted at her to get down, and a bullet shattered the window. He slammed her to the floor to shield her from the shot just in time. She cursed and flailed while he kept her pinned for her safety, hissing for her to shut up. Then he stuck the rifle out the broken window and fired one clean shot that ripped toward a shooter on a neighboring balcony. Another round immediately hammered in from a different angle. He ducked the woman down again and shoved her behind the couch. He picked a spent casing from the wall and froze. A hexagonal mark on the bullet tip, the signature of the Abbey organization. He'd been careless. The enemies had set up two shooters. Suki's friend blurted out that a European boss had tried to buy her technology and she'd refused. The pieces clicked into place for him. He warned her to stay low, then grabbed a shard of glass from the floor. Like a thrown knife, he hurled it with deadly precision. It buried into the neck of the remaining balcony shooter, crumpled immediately. Both assassins were down. "You can get up," he said, breathing hard, but the girl demanded to know who he actually was. He told her she didn't need to know and warned her to be quiet. There was noise outside. 3 goons had arrived and stood under the window, one recognizing him. They assumed he'd come to rob the place and charged up the stairs with swords. He met them on the landing with a calm smile. Before they could reach him, he landed a savage kick that dropped the first and a chest blow that floored the second. The leader was the only one left standing. He attacked with a blade, but the young man slipped past the strike, then stopped the sword mid-swing with a single finger and shattered the blade with a flick. In one motion, he had the leader by the throat, slapped him senseless, and finished him with a brutal kick until the thug begged for mercy and spilled the real reason they were there. The boss had sent people after Suki. The doorbell rang, and police announced themselves outside. The blonde woman, still trembling, told officers that 3 armed men had broken in. The cops cuffed the thugs and radioed that they'd found 2 bodies across the street. He didn't wait for thanks. He ran, desperate to find Suki. At her house, Kunhao was already there, barely holding his temper. He claimed he'd tried to be calm, but now planned to use force. Suki pleaded with him to go, but Kunhao snapped, having already sent men after the delivery boy. Then, in a flash of rage, he lunged at Suki, screaming that he was going to end her life.